Hey guys, this is Locke. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the best taros to use for supports and tank type characters. And the reason that I'm kind of meshing both of those two into one is because a lot of these taros work for both of them. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the Guidance of the World. So before I get into that, let me just spend a couple of minutes on the cooldowns of the hero skills. So this skill, Wine Bottle Casting, can be used once every 4 turns. So once you use it, after 3 more turns, you can use it again, right? So uh, what this tarot would do is after you use that skill, on the next turn, if you're just standing still, you don't use any skills, you just stand by, then it reduces the cooldown by 1. So if you use your Wine Barrel Casting, and then the very next turn you will see that you have 3 more turns to use it again. If you stand still that turn, that 3 turn cooldown will go to 1. So basically, after you use the Wine Barrel Casting and the next turn you stand still, you can actually use Wine Barrel Casting 2 more turns and use it again. So once every 3 turns now, you can use the Wine Barrel Casting. And that actually works quite well with the effect of Wine Barrel Casting, because the Wine Barrel Casting, it stays on the ground. The wine barrel stays on the ground for 2 turns. So the turn that the wine evaporates, you can use it again. So basically, if you have a hero that will always go after Edda, then that hero will always be able to take advantage of the minus 40% MDiff, magical defense debuff on the enemy, because it will always have it as long as you're utilizing this tarot. So if you are very interested in this, what you should be doing when you're playing Edda is on your turn you should be using all 3 of these skills, so they all go on cooldown, and then the very next turn you can stand by, and then the turn after that you actually should attack. And the reason why you're not standing by the next turn is because the cooldown goes from 4 to 3, then you stand by, it goes to 1, and now there's no reason to stand by again because it can't go from 1 to -1. So whether you stand by or you attack, it'll go from 1 to 0. So the rotation now will be skills, and then you can either attack or stand by, and then if you attack, the next turn you stand by. If you stand by, the next turn you attack. So every 3 turns she'll be using skills, 1 turn to stand by and 1 turn to attack. That'll be her skill rotation, and it makes her so much more useful, because she can get these skills out a lot faster and makes an even bigger impact on the game, in my opinion. So I've been using her with this most of the time. There's also some tanks that you can use this on. I mean, you can use it on a lot of people, actually. Let me give you an example of a hero that you might be able to use it on to produce a very specific effect. So if you look at Inanna's Princess Prayer, she's able to give an act again once every 3 turns. Using this tarot, the Guidance of the World, if you use this on Inna, I think her name is Inna. Maybe I'm saying it wrong, but I hope it's Inna. So if you use this on Inna, if you very, very specifically need her to give another hero, like maybe you have a hero that'll, I don't know, kill everything very quickly, right? And you want that hero to have as many turns as possible. Maybe it has a counter to the element that you're fighting, and you need that hero to take a lot of turns. You're not really using Inna to heal, you're only using her for that. Then this tarot might actually work. Like, it's a very specific niche case, but in this case, this tarot could work. Because what you want to basically be doing is that after you use Princess's Prayer, the very next turn you stand by, you don't do anything. I mean, I guess her passives will work and her trait effect will work, but other than that, you're not doing anything. So you can set her up something like, where is that? Like, she has a MDef command, right? Like, she can use this one because it's an aura, it's a passive. Like, those things will work. So you can use her as an aura and passive bot, and every other turn she will be using Princess's Prayer. That is a much higher utility rate than using this Princess's Prayer once every 3 turns. But again, this is a very specific thing that you're doing with her. If you're like, you won't be able to use her healing skills, because if you are, then this chariot effect will not work. So if you still need healing and you also want to do this, I mean, you probably have to bring a different healer. Like, this will only be an act again bot, basically. let's talk about characters that you can use it on. The Papal Guard works really nicely with it, and the reason it works so nicely, let me just put it on while I'm talking about it. The reason it works so nicely is because of this invulnerable. So if you look at the duration of when invulnerable effects last, they last for 3 turns. And once you cast the skill, you have to wait 4 turns before you can use it again. So if you are able to reduce that 4-turn cooldown down to 3, you can basically always have invulnerable on this guy. And he has one of the highest speeds in the game, 244. So he will most of the time, like, the turn that it expires, he will be able to use it again and reapply it on himself. So what you have to do, I mean, if you're using this idea and you want to do this, what you have to do is, after you use invulnerable, only on one of the turns that follow, you have to stand by. You don't have to stand by every turn because there's no point, right? Like, after you use this invulnerable, there'll be 2 turns where you could stand by and then use it again, but there's no need because, like, he can use the duration of it lasts for 3 turns anyway, so you should maximize that and make sure, like, there's no point in using it earlier. So basically what it would look like is you would use invulnerable, and then maybe the next turn you can shield or you can stand by. If you shielded the turn, then the next turn you have to stand by. If you stand by the turn, then you have to shield the next turn. And it also you can also use shields many times. So the turn that he's not standing by, you can use the shield effect twice, right? So yeah, that's a different way of playing him. The standard way that a lot of people, including myself up until now, have been using him is to use the Silence of the Hermit. A Silence of the Hermit basically is a very basic kind of card. It basically decreases the damage that you take by 20%. There's nothing complicated about it. It's just a good card to use for, I mean, everyone really, because it helps with survival. So this is a good card to use for tanks. It's a standard tank card. But if you really need a specific skill that has a long cooldown on a tank, this might be the card that you can use. If you look at the difference between the two, right? Like, this skill, the damage reduction is 40%. So maybe on the turn that he doesn't have the skill, maybe he's dying. So maybe you always want to have this. So maybe this was a way that you can set him up to do that. But if you're using the Silence of the Hermit instead, that is actually going to stack with the 40%, right? So he will have both the damage reduction 40% plus the 20% damage reduction from this. Like, it'll stack. So maybe you need that. I mean, depending on what you need, you can use either tarot. For support characters, that Silence of the Hermit is also good for them as well. I mean, it helps them have extra survival if you find that they're dying too fast. And depending on the support that you're using, like, for example, Edda already has built-in good defenses because she has the shelter advantage, which reduces the damage taken by 40%. So you can use the Silence of the Hermit again to make her a lot more tankier and use her as an off tank. You can build her that way if you really need to, and I have used her as an off tank in the past in some places where I wasn't able to bring a tank, or my tank was busy on one side doing something, and I was having her on the other side taking a lot of damage by standing next to a box or standing on the box. So that is another card that's good for both healers, support type characters, and also tanks. Now the next card that's really good for support characters is a very standard healing card, Mercy of the High Priestess. This basically increases your healing effect by 30%, and if the target that you're trying to heal is in the dying state, meaning his health is less than 70%, then you will do an additional 15% healing on that character. So it's basically just a healing tarot, nothing complicated about it. It's good for healers, it's good for Inna, it's good for Samantha, it's good for Angel, and any other such healers that you want to use. So the next tarot that I wanted to talk about is this one, Redemption of the Judgment. I would like to say it's good for supporting characters, but it has to very specifically be melee supporting characters. Now Blade could be a good example because Blade, I mean, where did he go? I don't really use Blade to do a lot of damage. I mean, he's there to dodge tank, really, which I feel is like a supporting function. So I from myself, I kind of classify him as a supporting character because that's mainly what he's there to do, like to take some kind of off damage, but not really able to tank. Does that make sense? So anyway, however you want to classify him, tank or support, you can use this on him. And what this does, so it dispels buffs from enemies. That's not the great part. The great part is actually the judgment. So what judgment does is it increases the damage the enemy takes by 10%. And I tested this out. You don't actually need to trigger the dispel buff for the judgment to trigger. Even if they don't have any buffs before, they will still be able to take the judgment debuff on them. So you can use this to basically increase the damage that bosses take or enemies that you're having a hard time to defeat. And he's doing other things as well, right? Like he's not getting hit, so you don't really need to be using Hermit on him. His dodge doesn't really have a cooldown, so you don't really need to use the Guidance of the World on him. So then what can you bring? Like why don't you bring this one? This one, if the enemies have buffs, it'll take 2 buffs off every time you stand within 2 turns of them. But also it will make your attacking heroes do more damage to them. So I feel like this is a good card to put on Blade, and also it would also work for other tanks too. If you feel like your tanks are defensive enough, or if you feel like your bruisers also are like defensive enough, they're not dying, and you have damage dealers in the back that do way more damage than your bruisers. That's actually true in my case, because in my case, my Nungle does so much more damage than any of my bruisers. That's just the way she's built. She sits on a box, Edda's box, so she always has True Lens trigger, and I have a 5-star True Lens because it just happened to drop a lot for me. So with the way that I have her set up, she does so much damage. She can easily hit for like 10k a turn with her basic attacks. So I want her to do as much damage as possible, so I can have this tarot on my supporting characters like maybe Gloria or Magnus, and they don't have to like stand still. This effect will just trigger as long as they're within two spots of the enemy, 2 tiles of the enemy. So those are, I think, some of the really good tarots that you can use for at least like support type characters. There is one more that I want to mention, which is this Gibbous Moon, and I think this is more towards the tanks instead of the supports. But for your tanking characters, there is a specific scenario where you might want to use this. Like if you find that your healers are just not able to keep up with the healing, either they're not healing enough because you still have some HP left over, and then because they don't heal to full, you're dying. This might be a card that you can equip on your, your tanks and your frontline heroes, so that they increase the healing received, and they also recover 20% HP every turn as well, as long as their health is below 70%. So this is going to alleviate some of the healing requirements from your healers, and this can also work well with heroes that have lifesteal in their kit, because basically it would also increase the effects of their own lifesteal as well. So, but it is a bit niche, so most of the time I think you would probably prefer like a Silence of the Hermit instead, so you just reduce the amount of damage taken. But there could be cases where this is this is the thing that works instead of that. Like with the Silence of the Hermit off, they don't die, but even with it on, they're not able to, your healer just can't keep up, so maybe this will work instead. It's something that I thought I would mention. Now there's one last thing that I want to talk about, which is a terrible card. This one, I really like this. I really want to like this tarot, but it sucks. It's just so bad. So the skill effect, I don't think it's that great. Like, I mean, even if you have, I don't know, like, I can't imagine my characters having more than, say, like 6,000 attack and, like P attack and M attack together. So it'll come out to like a shield of 1,500. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you can actually get your attack to be much higher than that. Maybe you can get it to like 10,000 or something. But even if you somehow get it to 10,000, and if your attack's at 10,000, like your health must be very high as well. So a 2,500 shield on like say 10,000 plus health isn't really a lot, right? So I feel like the skill effect is really bad. And then on top of that, the secondary effect, you decrease damage taken by 15% when you have a shield. Like, why would I want this effect when I can always have the 20% damage reduction of Hermit? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, there's no condition for the damage reduction to trigger for the Silence of the Hermit. So why would I want a secondary condition and then also have a worse off effect, you know? Like, if it was instead something like 30% or 25% damage reduction with shield, okay, it's something, you know. Or if the skill were something like it increases shielding effect by 25%, right? Like a 1000 shield becomes 1250. I think that's a good one, right? But as it stands, like the skill sucks, and then the detailed skill also sucks. So, you know, it's just overall it's just a bad card. So I thought I would mention that as well. So yeah, that's it for now. That's it for this video. If there's other taros that you find that are good, that have a really cool effect, let me know. Maybe I missed something, or maybe I'm just not thinking about it. Like if you happen to find some use for the March of the Chariot, because I think it's a really cool one. I just haven't found any kind of use for it. But if you found a use for it, let me know. I would be interested to hear your thoughts. Well, maybe I should mention this one too. This one, I can't really find a use for it. Like when I tested it out to see what these fortune buffs are, there was 5 of them, and one of them decreases damage by 10%. One of them increases damage that you do on enemies by 10. So one is damage taken reduced by 10, damage done increased by 10. The next one, it heals everyone around you within 2 spaces by a little bit. And then the fourth one, it damages everyone, all enemies around you by 2 spaces by a little bit. And then finally, the last one, it does nothing. It actually says, did not do any effects, because it says barrel messed up somehow or something. These effects itself aren't bad, but I feel like the randomness about it is, because like if you have it on a tank and you really want to get the I don't know, like the damage reduction, it's only 10%, so it's not even guaranteed, and the effect is worse. Like if you want to have the damage reduction because you're a tank, but on your turn you get 2 different buffs, like you didn't even get the buff you wanted. And if you are lucky enough to get the buff that you wanted, it's still a worse off effect than the Silence of the Hermit, right? So it just, yeah, I can't really find a use for it. It doesn't seem that great to me. But if you find a use for it, if you find that, you know, 2 or more of these buffs work together and produces some better effect than any of the other cards instead, let me know about it, because I would really like to know how you're using it. But yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time. Take care now.